Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
Jimmy Kimmel gets canned. Antifa designated as a terrorist organization. Interest rates drop. Education in the news. We're just getting started with the Honest Money Report and more. I'm Sam Bushman. Welcome to Liberty Roundtable Live. This is indeed the broadcast for September the 18th in the year of our Lord 2025, and our goal always to protect life, liberty, and property, to promote God, family, and country, and to do so on your radio and TV in the traditions of our founding fathers. After all, it is Constitution Week. Celebrate it with all your loved ones. Learn about it, read it, study it, pray that we can embrace it, insist on it. Let's use the checks and balances brilliantly put in the Constitution to restore the Republic and the traditions of our founding fathers. A lot of talk about Charlie Kirk in the news. Of course, we got to keep that discussion up as well as the broadcast unfolds. All right, there's so much to cover, so little time. Let me just start out with a couple of quick education stories. You know, Donald Trump told us he was going to abolish the education department. We really thought he would. Folks, 10 months later, we're not even close. All right? 9 months later, whatever you want to say, we're not even close to abolishing the education department. It's tragic, to say the least. The Department of Education announced a partnership with Turning Point USA on Wednesday, aiming to enhance what they call civics education nationwide ahead of America's 250th birthday, to be celebrated in 2026. We've been celebrating that, talking about that, working towards that. That's good. But I'm concerned about this educational partnership. On one hand, we think it sounds good. I don't think so, ladies and gentlemen. I don't think so at all. The coalition, they call it America 250. It's Civics and Education Coalition, includes over 40 different partnership organizations, including Hillsdale College, America First Policy Institute, Moms for Liberty, and a few others. Education Secretary Linda McMahon highlighted the, quote, decline in civic knowledge and constitutional literacy among the youth, and showing that less than half of Gen Z is proud to be American. Another study by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, I guess, showed that more than 70% of Americans failed a basic civil liberties quiz or literacy quiz. The new coalition, they say, will provide education and educational resources such as toolkits, videos, to various educators and institutions. Erica Donalds with the American Policy First Institute emphasized what she called the importance of understanding the U.S. Constitution to prevent violence as a response to speech. Now, here's why I'm against this, ladies and gentlemen. I thought we were going to abolish the education department. Now we're going to partner with Turning Point USA and 40 other organizations. I don't really see how you'll abolish this organization if you create all these partnerships. Once the Department of Education announces these partnerships and gets involved, they won't be able to back away. You won't get rid of the education department. All you'll do is cement the education department in place. And it's the conservatives that are doing it. Now, they say this Turning Point USA agreement was in place before Charlie passed away, and that they've been working on this for a while. Why would they be working on this if they're going to abolish the education department? It reminds me of the sex ed discussion in our government schools. You know, on one hand, we say, oh, man, we can't have teachers teaching kids about sex, man. Can't be doing that. And then the abstinence-only folks come around and they say, well, listen, if we're going to be forced to pay for sexual education in our government schools, the least we can do is teach abstinence only. And so what happens is the abstinence-only people get a slice of the pie. And now what you got is the abstinence-only people don't want to get rid of sex education because, by golly, it'll affect their wallet, you see. So now the sex ed folks and the, quote, abstinence-only education folks seem to be aligned. The abstinence-only people don't want to get rid of government sex education. They want to keep it. They just want to make sure it goes their way. Do you see how that propaganda eventually manipulates us into a situation where there's just no win? How do you shut down the education department when you're partnering with TPUSA and 40 plus other organizations? How do you get rid of sex education in the government schools when you've got the abstinence-only people clawing for their piece of the pie? And of course, each group always advocates for a bigger piece of the pie. It never ends. Well, if that's not enough to prove to you that they're not trying to get rid of the education department like they promised, I'll give you another one. On Monday, the Trump administration announced a, quote, redirection of nearly $500 million, $500 million, to historically black colleges and what they call tribal universities. What's a black college? I didn't know colleges were black or white. I just thought colleges were institutions that educated people. But just so you know, there's the black kind of colleges. What if I created a white college? Is that okay? Oh, no, Sam, you're a racist, for crying out loud. How dare you? Okay, well, we got black colleges. And what is a tribal university? Oh, Sam, it's where the Indians go to school. Okay, well, the Native Americans go to school. All right. Well, why are we funding that? Aren't the Indian reservations their own countries? Anyway, so we're going to redirect $500 million to this cause. They say financed by cuts to other education programs for what they call minority students. So now we're going to pit the minorities against the blacks and the Native Americans, you see, in this $500 big turnabout respend plan. How is that getting rid of the education department? It just seems like we're picking winners and losers when the Democrats are in charge, Democrat style, and when the Republicans are in charge, Republican style. But either way, we're not backing off on education. We're spending ourselves into oblivion. We're not shutting it down. We're creating more ties. They say the new allocations, that means of money, right, will also provide an additional $137 million for history, American history, and civics education. And then $60 million more for charter schools. Folks, they're not shutting down education, not even maybe. They say this comes amid a White House demand for a, quote, 15% reduction in the education department's budget next year. So they're going to spend all this money, reallocate all this money, partner with all these organizations, and then they're only asking for a 15% cut next year. That means by the time they get that cut in place, Trump will be in office half of his time. And all they've done was cut the education department 15%. Well, understand that if Trump's starting at 15%, how long will it be until Congress says, oh, what about a 15% raise? Trump's like, no, 15% cut. And then at the end of the day, it'll be zero. And we won't even reduce anything in education. They say significant funding reductions include $350 million in programs aiding minority students in science and engineering, as well as cuts from what they call gifted programs. Yeah, and then they call and magnet schools. So you got gifted programs and magnet schools that are going to lose some money. So, hey, the gifted, the people that work really hard in school, special program, hey, shut that down, give it to the black and to the Native American schools and redirect all this money. And see, none of it smacks of abolishing the education department. Education Secretary Linda McMahon stated that the, quote, reallocated funds would support more effective students' success initiatives. Do you want to fund more effective student initiatives? That's a far cry from abolishing the education department. I'll tell you that right now. They say total funding, listen carefully to this, total funding for historically black colleges this year will rise to $1.34 billion. Do you read me, ladies and gentlemen? Total funding for historically black colleges this year will rise to $1.34 billion. They say that's a 48% increase, while tribal colleges will receive approximately $108 million, doubling their expected budget. They say this funding shift, described as a, quote, one-time measure for this, quote, fiscal year, leverages a loophole amid the partisan deadlock in Washington. I don't even know how to respond to this stuff, folks. You've been punked if you think they're getting rid of the education department. I can tell you that. Wow. Historically, black colleges, over $1 billion. And they're going to cut education, huh? Hang tight. You're watching Liberty Roundtable. All right, Eldon, Stahl, the John Birch Society, JBS.org, and yours truly on your TV. Free video-based educational opportunities. The Constitution is the solution. The John Birch Society, JBS.org, to learn more. Take advantage of it. They want to charge you $1 gazillion for education. Some of the best education is free. It's called Life's Experience, by the way. Anyway, constitutional educational opportunities. Now, Trump extended the TikTok deadline. They call it the seller ban is what they're calling it, deadline, to December the 16th, 2025, marking the fourth delay since the initial, quote, January 19th triggered date, they say. Congress 2024, the law there requires the qualified divestiture of TikTok. And ByteDance is the parent company there. They say, including cutting ties to the operation of content recommendation algorithms. Anyway, it gets complicated. But at the end of the day, Trump announced we have a deal on TikTok, and he plans to discuss it with China's Jinping, or whatever his name is, Xi Jinping, to finalize details on Friday. Do you want to respond to this one? I don't know why Trump's even involved in this, Eldon.
Yeah, this has been a real controversial topic on TikTok as to whether it is, some people say, yes, it's a threat to our national security. I think there's some substance to that argument, but at the same time, are we clamping down on, free speech in a way that would be inappropriate? And then, of course, the idea of, you might say, nationalizing, essentially, any type of industry, is that something that is a proper solution to, something of this nature? Why, okay, so let's say a foreign country is effectively operating some media outlet and that threatens our national security. Does that mean that therefore the proper solution is for, the government to the U.S. government to take over that? Imagine,
well, here's
okay,
the deal. To me, it's flat out
we're
fascism.
going to take over Al Jazeera next, or I don't know.
Isn't it flat out fascism? We'll shut you down unless you give the government a stake.
Yeah, it seems to be that definition, doesn't it? It seems to be approaching that pretty close. And so, how would the U.S. government use TikTok or control TikTok or influence it? Would that be any better? I don't know. But and you don't know who's going to be in charge of the U.S. government in the future either. So this, a lot of times there's problems that are used, and then there's a solution that comes about, or somebody proposes, but it's maybe not the best solution. It's something that's going to be problematic down the line as well. So we need to be careful what solutions we're looking for.
Well, I look at this, though, and I kind of go, okay, they say Congress passed a law in 2024 demanding that, hey, they make a change here. You got to either change the algorithm or change the ownership or both or whatever. And I kind of look at it and go, where does Congress get authority to make a law like that? It's not even a United States corporation. It's an international corporation owned by the Chinese ByteDance or whatever group and stuff. Where do we all of a sudden say Congress can just flat out take over an international business? I mean, think about the repercussions of that, Eldon.
Yeah, and of course, there could be rules for if you're going to do business in our country, then you have to, abide by certain rules, I suppose, and that's, regulating international commerce with foreign nations.
Now, I go there and say, if you
That's
want to
right in the
discuss the rules that we're
Constitution,
going to
but
let you invest in our markets, I support that. But I kind of look at it and go, but you're going to shut it down or take it over? Where do you get the authority to go there? Now, if you want to say,
mhm.
hey, to play in the American market, here's the rules you've got to obey, I get that. I support that. But the takeover, the complete shutdown, and then, hey, Congress passes a law in 2024 and the president could just simply circumvent that law and delay it, delay it, delay it. We're almost a year into the delays now. And supposedly we're going to work out a deal now. And what does that deal look like? Donald makes the deal? Where does he get authority to make the deal with foreign nations regarding shutdown laws by Congress? I mean, this is all over the map constitutionally, to say the least, Eldon.
Yeah. Yeah, it ends up being real problematic. Part of it, like you say, Congress has delegated illegitimately its authority to the president to do so many things, but one in particular would be in matters of trade. It's very clear, it's extremely clear in the Constitution that Congress has the power to regulate commerce with foreign nations. Uh, there's nothing in there about the president doing that. So, whether it's the tariffs or just, something of this nature where basically Congress is saying, well, let's let the president figure it out. Well, no, that's not how it's supposed to work.
Now, let's listen to this story in light of our discussion right now. And I don't mean to interrupt, but I think this directly relates, and I want you to respond to this. Headline says House Republicans, led by Representative Nick Langworthy of New York, moved on Tuesday to extend Congress's relinquishment of power to disapprove President Trump's tariffs. When? Until March 31st, 2026. So they literally have a plan led by this guy in Congress to relinquish our tariffs responsibility to the president. This decision, they say, follows an attempt by Representative, guy's name is Gregory W. Meeks of New York, to block tariffs on Brazil, which was defeated. So Congress kind of acted there and defeated that. The procedural measure blocking lawmakers from, quote, forcing tariff-related votes passed mostly along party lines. Previously in March, Republicans imposed a, quote, similar restriction concerning tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China. This strategy marks a continued GOP practice of avoiding tariff votes, citing effectiveness in Trump's trade policies and negotiations. Representative Don Bacon of Nebraska, initially opposed the measure, citing constitutional concerns, but of course later shifted his vote because he was promised that they'd handle it appropriately. On the Democratic side, Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia and Rand Paul of Kentucky are pushing to terminate this emergency declaration. Anyway, the bottom line is they're all playing games with emergency, and they're all basically saying, hey, we can give our power to the president because he's doing such a fine job. Constitutionally, they don't have any authority to do that at all, Eldon. Fire these people. Throw them in jail for breaking the law.
Yeah, it's been going on for a very long time, actually, since I believe it was 1934, when Congress decided they wanted to empower the president to make, of course, that was under FDR, to be able to levy tariffs and all kinds of things. And in a way, it's convenient for Congress to do that. It's kind of like with declaring war. If things go badly, they can always just blame the president and say, well, that was the president's idea, and you'll just have to take it up with him every 4 years, although you only get one chance to reelect a president, right? So there's much less accountability when that happens. So once again, that's an illustration of the fact that if we want, for example, the tariff policies to change, maybe we like them, whatever it is, we need to not only talk with our congressmen, but demand that Congress retake its power so that we can have accountability ourselves on tariffs or war, whatever it might be.
I think it
so
would be
that if
best
things
if
go
the
great.
president. I think it would be best if the president would just do my job too, because I mean, it's hard to work every day and stuff. Eldon, and I'm just saying the president. If I could just point to the fact that he's doing a great job, my employer should just chill right out and be like, "Cool, Sam." Don't you think?
Well, yeah, I kind of want to be careful what you say, because then they'll say, well, maybe we do need to have an administration of, the Liberty Roundtable Bureau or whatever. And, that's often how it ends up being. And then they'll say, well, we'll allocate X number of dollars to produce this show, but here's the rules that you got to follow if you want the money, right?
Well, TikTok has over 170 million users in the United States. It isn't going away anytime soon. Well, here's what happened. I'll tell you right after the pause. I got kicked off TikTok. They just shut me right on down. I got my call into Donald. I'm just still waiting for the
dancer, or what happened?
Well, I've got my call into Donald. We're supposed to talk about this, but Donald's too busy overseas to call me. He's hanging out at big, black tie dinners and such. Well, I'm struggling because I can't even be on TikTok. 170 million users I could have access to, but no, not you, Sam. You ain't doing the bite dance well enough, buddy. All right, hang tight. Eldon, Stahl, yours truly, Liberty Roundtable Live.
Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
I got an idea, ladies and gentlemen. If President Trump can just circumvent the 2024 law where Congress says you got to get rid of TikTok, and he can just delay it, and pretty much circumvent it, and why can't he delay my IRS bill? Can't he just be like, hey, Sam doesn't need to pay an IRS bill. We're just going to put that off. You can put that off until I'm dead, okay? I'm just saying. Why not? Anyway, Donald announced, quote, we have a deal on TikTok, and he plans to discuss it with the Chinese leaders on Friday. And my question is, I want to get a hold of Donald. We need to make a deal, Donald, because there's over 170 million users of TikTok in the United States, and I want access to those, but TikTok doesn't think I should have access to them. So the Liberty Roundtable Live TikTok account gets shut down. There's the shutdown message there for you, ladies and gentlemen. And I got kind of wondering, can't we make a deal to bring me back? I mean, just here's the deal. I made a deal with Sam Bushman, sat down with him. Donald could just say this on Truth Social and everywhere else. I sat down with my buddy Sam Bushman over at Liberty Roundtable Live. We made a deal. TikTok's not shutting him down. We're not shutting TikTok down, and so TikTok's not shutting Sam down either. And then I'm going to suspend the IRS obligation for Sam Bushman. He doesn't need to pay taxes anymore. I'm just going to, what do you think, Eldon? Am I onto a good plan?
It could be.
I'm demonstrating the absurd a little bit, but I'm highlighting kind of that's what's going on, though, right?
Yeah, we need to. It's kind of like, you read about in history where countries that had kings, and sometimes they had good kings and people prospered, and sometimes they had bad kings and the people were in really bad shape. But the point that our founders learned was that it's really unwise to concentrate so much power in the hands of one person or a few people, because inevitably it's going to be abused, that power is. So you've got to distribute that power and have these checks and balances rather than just say, let's just have this person make all these decisions. it's similar to the Soviet model where they would have just committees of essentially wise men, so to speak, that would regulate or control all the minute details of our lives. So you got a multitude of oligarchies in a way under that system, which is in a way even worse.
If I was Donald Trump, I could just roll in on Friday when I talk to Xi Jinping or whatever it is. Just say, hey, Xi, TikTok shut down Sam Bushman. And I'm going to have to shut down TikTok if you guys don't put Sam Bushman back up. Just saying. There's 170 million people he could have access to that he doesn't have access to right now. And there you go. The Liberty Roundtable Live TikTok account gets shut down. Here's the interesting thing about it, too. I don't even know why we're shut down, really. They just said that some of my videos don't meet their, I don't know, guidelines or whatever else, but they don't really explain. And as you can see in this photo, there's no way that I can. They have a little statement that says I can protest it or whatever if you think it's wrong, but there's no way to do it. There's no button. All you can do is close. I can't go back and look at my account or do anything. It's just flat out shut down. Anyway, I got canceled. Now Jimmy Kimmel gets canceled as well. He got dumped after lies about suspected Charlie Kirk assassin. Trump reacts to the comedian's comments, says they were offensive and insensitive at the time. And they say in our national political discourse. Here's the way I feel. I don't think the government should decide, hey, should we shut people down that have their free speech or say things we don't like them to say or whatever else? I think companies can decide if they want to fire their employees over that or not. So I appreciate that Disney's ABC fired or has indefinitely suspended Jimmy Kimmel Live after his comments. I get that. But I guess my kind of take on this is companies can decide if they want to let people go or not. This shouldn't be a government or a societal discussion or decision. All right. Nexstar Media Group, the major owner of TV stations in the U.S., said, hey, we're just going to go ahead and put something else in place of that. And anyway, they say they compared Trump's reaction to Charlie Kirk's death, and Kimmel mocked it, saying, he compared it to how a child mourns the loss of a pet. I agree, they're just absolutely bogus comments. But I'm saying I don't think we should have a national discourse about, hey, should we just fire everybody that doesn't agree with our side now? Or should we whatever? We need to be very careful about that and realize private companies can decide what they want. If I want to keep an employee, no matter what they say, it's my choice, not government, Congress, president, public opinion. Choice at all, Eldon. What do you say?
Yeah, and probably this was not just a reaction to one single thing that Mr. Kimmel had said, or a factor of just this one instance. But there's always the straw that breaks the camel's back, so to speak. From what I understand, this is, ratings were not the best. Let's just say that. And if you're going to continue a show on TV, you've got to sell advertisements. You got to pay the bills, right? You've got to have people watching so that they watch the show, but also watch the ads that are going to be put between the segments of the show. That's just basic economics. That's the realities of running a business. And
I have no problem with them deciding to fire him over this.
Business.
If that's what they want to do, it's a business. If it's financial, if it's economic, if they don't like what he said, if they don't feel he represents I don't have any problem with them doing this at all. My problem is this national discourse or this presidential edict or congressional mandates kind of thing. Hey, we just pick winners and losers and we just demand it. Shut down Sam, keep TikTok alive. Great example, right?
Yeah, and I mean, if ABC had seen that, hey, this is going to all blow over, we should just keep Jimmy Kimmel's show going. They would keep him going because it takes a lot to put together a show. You can't just willy-nilly fire somebody like that and think there's going to be no consequences. It's not easy to find talent. And yeah, Jimmy Kimmel, he is a talented guy in some respects, but of course, we know that his political leanings are, you know, it's kind of like Jay Leno said a while back. He said, "Why would I want to alienate half my potential audience? You know, it doesn't matter how funny you are. If you're just making jokes about, say, one side, so to speak, that's just bad business. Why would you do that?" And so
Yeah.
ABC just had to make a decision.
And that just foments the greater divide we're talking about in America, too. It's amazing. We say, hey, you can't have TikTok here. Got to shut it down. We're keeping TikTok alive, but TikTok's allowed to shut down Sam Bushman. And then Jimmy Kimmel gets shut down. And I guess, can't Jimmy do what everybody else does? Actually go on their own and try to build a business of your own? Hey, Jimmy, you can go ahead and do that, buddy.
Yeah,
If you need
I'm
some
sure
help and you need some
he has a
consulting,
future
call me.
somewhere.
Don't you think I should consult for Jimmy Kimmel and help him get up and running?
Yeah, I mean, there is a market for his whatever he wants to put forward so far as entertainment, but it might not be as big as he thought it was, or he might have to change his content of delivery so he can appeal to a broader audience, whatever it is. I mean, there's different things that people find that are humorous, and you know, he has a talent in doing that. But you know, sometimes you got to really at least let the market speak and say, well, okay, maybe, you know, if you're in the business of whatever it is, you can't just force whatever you're offering down people's throats. There has to be an appeal for it. You have to persuade them. That's just how it is.
That's how it is. I also find that these people are rock stars when they're promoted on a gazillion radio stations and TV stations by big financial contracts. When you yank that away, though, they're about the average Joe like the rest of us there. And Jimmy Kimmel, his annual salary is around $15 million annually, okay? And I guess what I'm kind of saying is one of the things that they're starting to find out is when you've got all kinds of influencers and broadcasters and people like me that don't make near that kind of money and we're successful, part of the problem is that the ROI, the return on investment, when you pay this guy 15 mil, there's no money left over for anybody else. So one of the things they need to do is realize you got to cut bait and go find somebody that'll do it for, well, if they put me in his place, I'll do it for $1 million. How's that? 15 times reduction. I'd be the late night talk show on ABC. What do you think of that there? You know?
Oh yeah.
And then we'll see if my information, well, I've been banned from TikTok, but maybe on ABC, maybe everybody would love it, huh? All right, Antifa's in the news. We'll tell you about it in seconds. All right, back with you live. You got Sam Bushman. You got Eldon, Stahl, field coordinator for the John Birch Society with me, jbs.org. Their incredible magazine called The New American's available to you now, too. The newamerican.com. They do a phenomenal job over there. So Trump says we have a deal on TikTok. He's going to meet with the Chinese president on Friday to work it out. I want a deal. I need to be back on TikTok, Donald. Can you help me, buddy? You actually are my president, not the communist Chinese president. Anyway, if you got time to meet with him, hopefully you'd have time to meet with a constituent like me because I've been shut down, buddy. Is that right? Anyway, canceled. Jimmy Kimmel got shut down after telling lies. That's an interesting twist. He makes $15 million a year. Maybe they're going to save a chunk of change on that, and hopefully they'll find somebody that's a little more reserved in their commentary, a little more appropriate in their explanation of the supreme law of our land than a whole lot more as we celebrate Constitution Week. President Trump announced that he is designating Antifa as a terrorist organization. He said it's a sick, dangerous left disaster. In a Truth Social post, Trump stated that he would recommend that those funding Antifa be thoroughly investigated according to the highest legal standards and practices. You want to respond to this one, Eldon?
Well, I think this is long overdue. The people that seem to be opposing this are arguing that Antifa is some sort of, spontaneous, decentralized type of a thing. This is very naive if you believe that. You don't have massive riots and people just, spontaneously coming and using tactics which are obviously coordinated to disrupt society in a massive way without some sort of guidance, planning, training, funding, and coordination. So to say that this is some sort of spontaneous thing or just not, it doesn't have some sort of central brain in a way is
So here's
really,
the plan. Ready,
yeah.
Eldon? Here's the plan. I think if there's no central organization, why don't they just transfer all their bank account money to me?
Well, yeah, right. And
I mean, you wouldn't have to ask anybody, would you,
we
Eldon?
wouldn't have to, right, right, for
Nobody
sure.
in charge there over there.
Yeah. For what it's
My whole
worth,
point is demonstrating the absurd by being absurd and just saying to everybody, hey, if there's no real central point, who controls the money? Who controls the assets? And if there's nobody there,
yeah,
then, I mean, it's my money, for heck's sakes. I'm just telling you right now. And if there is somebody that you would have to ask or that's in charge, then why don't we follow the money and put them on the, I don't know, witness stand, on the
yeah,
investigative table for discussion? Hey, where did this money come from? Why is it being paid to you if nobody's in charge here? Who are you to steal the money from this nobody in charge organization? If you have control of the money, it's stealing. If nobody's in charge of it, you stole it from nobody. I mean, everybody. I mean, what? Right? I mean, it'd be like
yeah,
a reality court TV show, Eldon. It'd be fantastic. It could replace Jimmy Kimmel.
yeah. It could, I suppose.
You just watch reality TV show, man. We're gonna go ahead and steal the money where nobody's in charge. Nobody has the money. Nobody has control. What? You just go through this whole kind of convoluted, laughing stock, and you could divest people of money that don't have any responsibility or involvement in it pretty easily. But anyway, I support this idea.
Yeah.
I agree it is a dangerous radical left extreme organization, and they ought to be investigated.
Yeah, they ought to. We put out articles and then kind of compiled those into a little booklet, domestic terror, Antifa unmasked booklet. But basically, this little thing, it shows how, Antifa is basically a communist movement. Not a big surprise at all. They claim to be, anti fascist, okay, but anti-fascist in the sense of like World War II, where Stalin was against the so-called fascists of Hitler, and it's kind of like two arms of the same monster fighting each other. They're not pro-freedom, obviously. They're grab your crowbar and smash everything in sight type of a thing. Well, it's a terrorist organization. And they have consistent messaging. They have consistently stirring people up to hate others and to the point of doing violence to them. You might say similar to what we just saw, this fellow that's accused of killing Charlie Kirk. That level of hatred. And of course, that doesn't happen just overnight. People don't just wake up and say, I want to go and hurt or possibly kill somebody that I disagree with. That's not a natural thing that people do. There has to be conscious, consistent, planned agitation to get something like that to happen.
At least I haven't been kicked off of Truth Social yet. I mean, that's good news, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So, there you have that. I just find that very interesting. Why are we just now designating Antifa as a terrorist organization? What about the last 10 months Trump's been in office? I mean, I appreciate they're starting an investigation now, but if you start the investigation now, Congress ends what? December? Then there's a new congressional session.
Well,
Don't you have to start over with all
Right.
kinds of legislative initiatives and everything else? And will it even last? And it seems like to me a great way to bring it up, but not have any real accountability.
It could be, but I mean, at least it's something. It's better than he had kind of toyed with the idea in his first term. Now I think he's finally going to go through with it and designate them a terrorist organization. How much of it come out of it, I don't know. But, this is at least, there's a possibility of some accountability here with Antifa rather than just saying, well, they're exercising their free speech rights. No, these are people that are, making, in a way, improvised, but it's obvious it's very coordinated weapons against the police, and to try to sow such chaos and disorder and anarchy that they essentially take over the place, like they did with, it seems like, with the judiciary system. Was it Seattle with this? You remember that trial with the Andy No or whatever his name was? And the jury was essentially intimidated into letting all these Antifa people go free.
Yeah, dude. What if Antifa just decides to take you out, Eldon?
Yeah, well,
that's the point that I'm getting at. Is that's why this is a subversive terrorist organization, because people are threatened and people's lives are in jeopardy and the threats are there. And I mean, if you go to the Antifa and some of these other places, websites and stuff, Black Lives Matter, and I know they're not quite the same thing, but they work together on things. You'll find out many of these. I mean, they blatantly are subversive to the family, the fundamental unit of society, right?
Sure. Yeah, and it shouldn't be any big surprise. The talking points meld very well with the Marxist, Leninist, communist type of ideas, and fundamental to that would be the abolition of the family, what we call nowadays the traditional family, I suppose, but that's the family unit that God created. And that, of course, destabilizes society and leads to the growth in government over our lives. Of course, they're against God. They want to abolish God. Well, where ever heard that before? So these organizations tend to be, in a lot of ways, a violent, terroristic type of a front group for the change that the Marxists have wanted for years and years. If they disagree with each other, it's disagreeing on tactics of how to bring about this so-called utopia that the Marxists want.
Well, it's about time Donald Trump bring focus to this. And I pray somebody somewhere listens to his advice to, use the highest legal standards to verify, who they are, where their money comes from, what they've been doing with the money, all that, create this accountability and stuff like that. And then really creating accountability for these groups that are subversive to the country. I believe that the family, it's the God-ordained family. It starts with a male and a female together in fidelity, taking care of each other, taking care of their children. In fact, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints back in 1995, 30 years ago, put together the proclamation to the world on the family, designating the traditional roles of husbands and wives and children, and realizing that, families are ordained of God. Now, if you don't have a traditional family, I'm not here to down you or anything else. Hopefully we can build the best family and loved ones and support group for you that we can out of the circumstances. But at the same time, we should endorse and teach to the ideal. I know we live in the real. We can make the real closer to the ideal with our hard work and efforts and kindness and Christian living and love thy neighbor as thyself attitudes and all. That's wonderful, which we need to do. But we need to expose these people that are subverting that very focus. And Trump's doing it. He's highlighted it. And I hope it continues. We support him in that effort 1,000%. Investigate them. Find out what they're really doing. Find out where they get their money from for reals. Will George Soros end up in the middle of that? Don't know. We got to have transparency and accountability. That's to say the least. Eldon Stahl, thank you so much, sir.
Oh, great to be on. Thanks so much, Sam.
Eldon Stahl, field coordinator for the John Birch Society. You become a member, jbs.org. They do a phenomenal job. They've got their free, incredible work on the Constitution as well that I think you need to pay attention to for Constitution Week. It's free. Look it up. It's on YouTube and at jbs.org, ladies and gentlemen. Incredible stuff. Let's celebrate Constitution Week together, shall we? Free video-based educational opportunities. The Constitution is the solution. Check it out on YouTube and more. I'm Sam Bushman, syndicated by the Loving Liberty Radio Networks, lovingliberty.net. Spread the word, share the love, and God save our constitutional republic.